Okay, I wanted to share my fresh opinion and perspective and be chatty and yappy real quick because I can. And I want to preface this video by saying I am no longer a Christian, but I was raised heavily in church. I was a PK, meaning I was a preacher's kid. So I was very involved in ministry. My parents were very involved in ministry. My parents are very involved in ministry. So I grew up very heavily in church, and I still feel like I'm allowed to have an opinion about whatever I want, but I definitely feel like I'm allowed to have an opinion on Black church in particular. And so I just watched the video. I just watched Not Carlton Banks make a skit based on a video that's been surfacing on the internet. I don't know how recent it was. But it's the video of the woman named Mahogany who was a praise team leader at a church and was let go. But you can find it if you look up, Mahogany praise team leader, or just like general words like being called out or being let go, praise team leader. Like if you look that up, it should pop up. But anyways, essentially, the first lady, who was also, I guess, the co-pastor of that church, she tried to call out Mahogany. I don't know what the issue was, like, with the tension, with the beef was. Intuitively, what I'm picking up was that she didn't like Mahogany's energy towards her. That doesn't mean that Mahogany had nasty energy towards her. It just means the first lady didn't like the energy she had towards her. Maybe she felt like she deserved more sweetness and kindness than Mahogany gave her, or more openness. Like she wanted a conversation with her. Mahogany didn't want to talk about it. Like she was offended that it seemed like to me a classic case of Mahogany set a boundary and the first lady was offended that she set a boundary. That's as loosely as I can describe that. Anyways, I don't know what the problem was, but whatever the problem was, the way the first lady called her out over the pulpit was very nasty, and she tried to make it seem like she tried to make it seem like what she was doing, the way she was calling her out and clearing out God's house, was biblical and godly, but it was not. And again, like, people don't even need to know the background to know that her intention was not from a godly place, that she indeed did not consult God before calling Mahogany out publicly. And I just want to say, as someone who has left religion, that this kind of attitude is very much why, and people are saying it in the comments, this is why people don't go to church anymore. This is why people don't want to feed into Christianity anymore. Because it is not spiritual. And after breaking out of religion and learning about other religions and other spiritual beliefs, one thing in particular that they do not teach in church is about your ego. They don't teach you about the ego. And that's on purpose, because if you are aware, 1, 2, 3 on my clock, if you are aware of your ego and of like what your ego really is, then you would have so much more self-control over yourself. You'd have self-awareness. And the people who spread Christianity don't want you to be self-aware because they don't want you to have control over yourself. Argue with your mama about that. Don't argue with me, but it's the truth. People don't have a correct definition of what ego is. Ego isn't like your pride or your inability to be like humble. It's not like selfishness or self-centeredness. Like, it can be that when it's unchecked, obviously. But your ego is your persona. It's your personality. It's not your spirit. And your ego reacts out of fear because it's trying to protect itself. Now follow me. I'm gonna break this down. If you believe and understand that you are that you are God, you are God having an experience as a human being, that means that your soul's true essence is unconditional love, because what God is the embodiment of unconditional love. Unconditional love would not have reacted in this way. It doesn't mean that it would have excused rudeness or nastiness. Let's say Mahogany, which I don't know and I don't think so, but let's say she was rude. Let's say she was out of line and the way she handled the First Lady was disrespectful. What would separate the ego from the spirit is this. The ego gets offended. The ego is insecure. The ego is afraid. So in order for the ego to protect itself, it bucks up. And so what we saw was the First Lady's ego overcome her spirituality, overcome her spirit, and buck up, and decided that she needed respect and recognition by force. And she did that by trying to humiliate Mahogany in front of the public, because she was afraid of being disrespected. Her ego was afraid of being disrespected, of being made less than. As a spiritual leader, there is no room for your ego to take over as you try to guide people in spiritual matters. Like, your ego needs to be separate from your spirit and the spiritual matters at hand. Period. I think spiritual leaders obviously need to have boundaries. They need to guard their hearts and their gifts. But you can do that without leading by your ego. And that is why I think people are so turned off by church, but also Christianity, because what they are picking up on across the pulpit is ego. That's why I left. And I never faced incidents like this in church necessarily, but I still picked up on ego. And so everyone, every Sunday, from the pastors to the clergy to the congregation, everyone goes into church, especially Black people, goes into church wanting a spiritual experience, wanting their spirits to be fed. But because everyone is going in being led by their egos, because they don't know the difference, they don't know the definition of the ego, and they don't know the difference between their egos and their spirits, their egos are leading. And it blocks them from having a true spiritual experience with God. It's like if you go to a doctor and you expect them to help you to get better, but instead they get sick and they can't help you get better. It's the same thing as going to a spiritual leader who is filled with ego. If the spiritual leader cannot separate themselves from the ego, they can't lead someone spiritually, because the both parties are stuck in their ego. There has to be separation. There has to be someone who is more spiritually mature in that situation, that is able to recognize the difference. And you can really tell by how Mahogany handled the situation with grace and class that it really disturbed the First Lady. Like, she started getting flustered as she started quoting the scripture. And then she looked to the other praise team leader or member and asked her if she could take it to God, like redirect the energy to God. She got off the pulpit speaking in tongues. Like, she was flustered because she was battling her ego. You have to separate your ego when it comes to matters of spirituality. Now, I encourage everyone to do their own research, though, because there is a way where you can integrate your ego. There's a way that you can work with your ego. Your ego isn't all bad. But when it goes unchecked because you're not aware of it, you're not aware of what voice you're hearing, what voice you're feeling, and what voice is being communicated to you, then you don't have control over your emotions or your thoughts. Simple.